because Battletech is so fan driven. It was kept alive by the fans when Catalyst weren't even in the equation, when Tops were completely ignoring it and Microsoft weren't making video games about it. We, the Battletech fans, were still talking about it, talking about the lore, and that's how these YouTube channels immediately started. And I have to make some pointed remarks at Battletech fans on YouTube who have channels and are saying nothing about this.
All right, let's get into this Battletech stuff. Okay.
Oh, yes.
Now, anytime we go and we do the Autistic deep dive into Battletech or any sort of subject like we did with Warhammer recently with Arch, my job is to be the person who knows nothing about it. Okay, so let's start here, Razor.
Well, you don't have any history with all the years in gaming? No history with Mech Warrior or any of the Battletech games?
Very little.
Yeah.
Very little. So let's start there. Give everybody who, if it's their first time ever hearing about this, what is Battletech?
Yeah, Battletech is Mech Warrior, first off, because most gamers, people who are watching this are probably more so gamers. They're probably more familiar with the Mech Warrior series. Mech Warrior 2 is like the reason we have graphics cards on PCs today. Like, it was a huge hit back in the day. So, yeah, Battletech is Mech Warrior. Mech Warrior is Battletech. Battletech is just a futuristic sci-fi series, basically Game of Thrones before Game of Thrones, and set in space. All these rival houses vying for position, fighting against each other. And the primary vehicle of that conflict is giant stompy robots that are piloted by people. It's kind of an Americanized, almost mecha anime in a way. It's unique. It's not like Japanese mecha where they're wielding swords and, like sliding around on roller skates and whatnot. Like, it's not like that. So it's really kind of this galactic super conflict with just giant robots on top.
Okay. And how long has Mech Warrior existed?
Mech Warrior since about the late 80s. It was the name of so the original game is a miniature war game, much like Warhammer, which is why they have a lot of the same problems right now, the franchises. And Battletech itself is sort of the war game, and Mech Warrior is the RPG. So that spun off into the video game series of Mech Warrior. There's only a few Battletech games, but there's a lot of Mech Warrior.
Okay, so it's seen 30, 35 plus years of success, right? And
it was huge at one time. Like, it was bigger than Warhammer at one time. Huge.
Right. And
had a Saturday morning cartoon even.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. When was that?
Mid-90s. It's great. You can watch the whole thing on YouTube. It was fantastic. It's surprisingly adult.
Okay. So it's been around a long time, seen a lot of success. Who would you say the general demographic is for Mech Warrior?
Aging 40-something gray beards. Like, that's most of the demographic. There have been like more younger gamers rather coming into the hobby over the last several years because of video games. There were recent video games released in 2018. There was the Battletech game by Harebrained Schemes. Of course, there's Mech Warrior Online, but we don't talk about that one. And Mech Warrior 5 came out more recently. So that kind of has led to an influx of new people into the hobby, but there's also a slightly more insidious component to it where, as Warhammer was wokeified over the past 6-7 years, there's a board on Reddit called r/sig Marxism. And a lot of those people, as there was pushback against the sort of social justice agenda over there in the Warhammer and 40K hobby, a lot of those people became castaways in Battletech. They noticed that there were people in the Warhammer space that were forsaking Warhammer for Battletech. And so basically the Sig Marxists followed them over there. And that's really when all these problems began.
Okay. And you said that's been the last 5-6 years?
Something like that. Yeah.
This seems to be a trend when it comes to a lot of this stuff where it like somewhere around,
2015, 16. Yeah.
Yeah. Like the 2016, 2020, like that seems to be a reoccurring theme with a lot of this, okay. So it's had a long-standing success, and similar to Warhammer, has it seen it's seen growth in the last few years? Is that accurate?
It had been dormant for a long time. I have a unique history with it because I was making videos about Battletech when it was dead. Like they weren't making any new stuff. It was just after Catalyst had grabbed the license. I should mention the original creators of Battletech are Fossa Studios. A lot of people, gamers back in the 90s, remember that name because they were all over the place. They did more than just Battletech. They did Crimson Skies and other stuff. They did Shadowrun. So they're very, very famous. It just they died off in the early 2000s through a number of corporate misadventures. And now their franchise is kind of licensed by a bunch of different companies. Microsoft owns Mech Warrior in a video game context, and Topps owns like pen and paper Battletech in the miniature game.
Topps
it's kind of a funky, split ownership situation. Catalyst themselves, I don't know what the deal is. I've heard from people that there's some kind of subsidiary of Topps. I have no idea if that's true, but for a long time, they were just an independent licensee who were paying a flat licensing fee for Battletech to make the new tabletop stuff, which is what they've been doing for the last several years.
Okay. So fast forward to recently, and there's this X thread from Grum's, which he credits you as a big part of this. But let's go and start here. A few years ago, it says they turned Mech Warrior gay. Yesterday, Battletech publisher Catalyst community managers freak out and mass block many Battletech fans, including Drive-Thru RPG creator and the Otter Poops, in blind rage. This is a sad tale of Battletech's descent into madness.
And can we just say, Otter Poops, dude, is the most non-partisan, non-political. Like, this guy's been just a pillar of the Battletech community for years. They went after him just because, well, you'll see why. It's ridiculous. This was something that was set in motion a long time ago. They had a list of people. They were checking it twice. They were getting ready basically for a clampdown on the Battletech community ideologically. The one thing that I'm not clear on is if this comes from the people who own Battletech itself, Topps, because they're a bit woke as corporations go, or if it's coming purely from Catalyst. My gut says little a column A, little a column B, because there's some real shrieking douchebags over at Catalyst, and no mistake.
When you say Topps, we're talking about this is the baseball card company.
Yep, they're the ones who own the sort of physical merchandising rights of Battletech.
Okay. And you mentioned Otter Poops. Or they no longer, is it he, I guess, Otter Poops? His account no longer exists. He's been shunned off of X, or he deleted his entire account based off of...
That may just be a faulty tag, because I've seen him post in the last several days, unless he deleted his account in the interim. But that may just be, he may have just tagged that incorrectly.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it says, this is a sad tale of Battletech's descent into madness, firing conservative authors, defending violent woke contributors, defending doxing contractors, hostile takeover of the Battletech subreddit, takeover of the demo team Discord, woke community manager running amok. So let's start here real quick. Everyone knows what a subreddit is, right? But the demo team, this is what exactly is the demo team in
demo team is like, well, for a tabletop game, it's sort of people who maybe own a gaming store or a card store or something like that, or maybe people who run their own local gaming group. This is important because the demo team is a crucial junction point between the people who make Battletech and the Battletech community, because they're getting to sort of iterate on the current tabletop rules, kind of suggest rule changes, and they really are largely culled from the Battletech community itself. These are not necessarily people on the Catalyst payroll, and they had an official Discord for that demo team, and those people are from all different walks of life, right? Some of those people reached out to me when a lot of this started to happen really, really early on, before it really blew up. And some of their horror stories were, this was a long time in the making, really, this sort of WWE heel turn that Catalyst are pulling.
Let's continue here. Grums continues. Once again, a lot of this thread stems from research that you put together.
Yeah, I did 2 different videos
Mm-hmm.
on this. And when the initial thing that's referenced, firing conservative authors, they're referring to Blain Paro, who was he's been on my show several times. After he was fired, I not only talked about his firing in a video called It's Time to Gatekeep the Gatekeepers, and then I had a live stream where we talked with Blain Paro right after he was fired and discussed what exactly led up to it, how he was kind of rebounding. Now he's more successful than ever. He's making more money than ever. Like he's way better off than being just a slave of Catalyst. But it was still nevertheless kind of a comedy of errors that led to his removal. It's just ridiculous when you get into this stuff.
All right, continues here with Grum. Says the controversies in Battletech were reignited when emails with Catalyst Labs customer support were leaked. I spoke to community members who said that former Battletech author and demo team member Robin, who also goes by Valk, had been threatening people for the past year, including gun violence, and by doxing a community member by posting a Google map of their home.
It's crucial that I want to point this out because I didn't see this mentioned. This would have been something I would have talked about. Grums and I were going to hook up and talk about this stuff, but I've been so busy with Ghost of the Badlands, we didn't get around to it. But the server in which those people were doxed had people like Mike Stackpole, who's a famous author of Battletech and Star Wars and a bunch of stuff. He was in that server. And some of them were egging them on, right? Russell Zimmerman, people who are involved, official employees of Catalyst were not only in this server where fans of Battletech were being doxxed over their politics by this violent trans lunatic, but some of them were egging it on. Russell Zimmerman in particular was responding to Valk in real time and encouraging them in their doxing attempts.
I want to let you know, I reached out to Grum just now. I just sent him the link. So if he wants to hop on, just kind of further it on. Are you cool with that, Razor?
Yeah, I recommend you reach out to Blain Paro at some point too and talk to him because his story of getting fired is ridiculous, utterly absurd.
Well, let's continue here with this thread. It says the email was sent by someone.
Oh, sorry. One more thing before we move on. That Discord where the doxing was taking place, it was called Star League. The Star League Discord. It self-deletes every single post after 12 hours, which is not suspicious at all, by the way. It automatically deletes everything. So we only know the stuff that was left up long enough for people in that Discord to actually screenshot it because they were covering their tracks. And then a bunch of that stuff was deleted after people like me and mage leaders started reporting on this. All that stuff went away. So,
okay, interesting. Continuing on here, says the email was sent by someone concerned with his behavior. Catalyst community managers responded by immediately mass blocking anyone who talked about it and anyone remotely related to them in a guilt by association purge. No one has any idea why Catalyst initiated the purge, but it wasn't their first, and it hit many innocent non-participants like Otter Poops. Yep. Otter Poops immediately withdrew all his support for Battletech, including over 160 podcast and game design material. So he just pulled all of his everything talking about it offline.
He had briefly quit the internet. Essentially, he quit the franchise. He was just despondent. I mean, this is a guy who has dedicated himself for years to Battletech. Look, I've been talking about Battletech on YouTube before most of the Battletech channels, but I didn't devote my whole channel to it. I can imagine dedicating your whole channel or a big chunk of your channel to talking about this franchise. And then you wake up one day and just because you're following the wrong people, you get blocked. And we did, of course, learn that there was privately a list of people that they basically had they called it a public relations initiative, which is hilarious. And whenever they launched this new PR, which was essentially just omnipresent wokeness, they planned ahead of time to block a bunch of people who were identified with Battletech and they knew wouldn't fall in line. And apparently this guy was one of them. It was a little bit delayed in his case, but when they rolled this out initially, I was blocked. Mage Leader was blocked. A bunch of people, and I never interact with their account really. So,
okay. It says Catalyst seems to be actively trying to hide any involvement with this former contractor and is silencing anyone talking about it.
yep.
The thread continues, and this is kind of gets into what you were talking about with Mike Stackpole over here. It says Catalyst is the current licensor of the Battletech tabletop game owned by Tops, which was licensed in 2007. Talk about the original team members, Mike Stackpole and Blain Paro. Generated excitement as they joined Catalyst to continue the legacy. But the authors were at odds, as Mike is left-leaning and Blain is conservative, both active in politics on social media. In 2022, Blain had a well-known issue with a Battletech fan named at the time, that's interesting, at the time, Faith McCloskey.
Yeah, and I talked about this at length. This is what led to Blain Lee Pardo's firing, is there was this quote-unquote female writer who had begun like shooting off emails on the sly to Catalyst saying, oh, look at Blain Lee Pardo, look what he's posting to social media. And these were like room temperature takes. These are basic just conservatism and whatever. But this Faith McCloskey was claiming that Blain Pardo was a neo-Confederate, that he wanted to put black people in chains and he was a neo-Nazi and all of this stuff. And they kept shooting it over there. And then they claimed a bunch of harassment from Blain Pardo, which was, you look at those threads and there was no harassment ever took place, right? Well, this person was so dogged, and so they were essentially stalking Blain Pardo, and they were using dupe accounts and such. And so he hires a private investigator to find out what's going on with this person, because it was really, really intense. Finds out Faith McCloskey's not Faith McCloskey. It's some dude in Pennsylvania who's a total nut job. And the problem with it, and had a criminal record. And the problem was Catalyst, in order to placate this person, publishes them in a like a serialized magazine called Shrapnel. So they got their god-awful Battletech fan fiction published in an issue of Shrapnel because Catalyst were just too cowardly to stand up for one of their authors. And that ultimately blows up even further when Blain Pardo finds out all this stuff. Catalyst finally cut him loose over the accusations, and then he goes public with, okay, so here's what's going on. This person's not even a real person. They're like an assumed identity, and they're trying to influence editorial at Catalyst and apparently succeeding, and that has culminated now in my firing. And as it turned out, that was the canary in the coal mine, because it only got worse from there.
Well, as you said, according to this Twitter thread, Catalyst decided to publish a short story by Faith. The community exploded. What was that like? The community exploding? Like, were people? Was there pushback on this? Like, what the hell are you doing?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I made my video. They flipped out. I started getting blocked by official Catalyst accounts after I did that, which is wild because if you watch that stream, Blain Pardo never says boycott the company. In fact, at one point he's asked point blank, should we organize a boycott of Battletech? And he says, guys, don't boycott them. Go enjoy Battletech if you want to. Just, I'd appreciate if you supported my books as well. Right? He was as magnanimous as a guy could possibly be. And, but ultimately they believed that the community were their enemy, and they have turned that into a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So that's like the first big blow up in the community. Right. Yeah. And people have kind of started to see the shift happen where a company is too scared to back somebody that works for them, and they bend the knee to some crazy person online.
Yeah. And I got some scuttlebutt from within the company that the real problem was they went over Catalyst's head and went to Tops with these emails. So it was Tops that from on high told them to fire Blain Pardo. Now, I'm somewhat incredulous about that, given their subsequent behavior. Like, they've only gotten worse in the intervening period. So were they really having their arm twisted, or are there just a bunch of world-rending wokesters in that company, as we can clearly see from many of their Twitter feeds? I mean, they have, for all their talk of Blain Pardo being fired because we want to distance ourselves from his conduct on social media, there are open and avowed communists who work for Battletech and Catalyst right now, who are still gainfully employed. They recite communist claptrap on all their social media accounts, and they have not yet to lose their employment.
Well, speaking of employment, let's go ahead and go to the next level with the community manager.
I should add, by the way, you mentioned the demo team members getting doxxed on that server, that Star League server. Those docs of the demo team members and such were then handed off to none other than Faith McCloskey, the fake woman who had already showed a propensity for stalking and who has a criminal record, by the way. So they handed those docs off. Again, Russell Zimmerman, official Catalyst employee, is in that Discord server interacting with Volk and encouraging them. So there are official employees. Mike Stackpole in that Discord server. I didn't see any direct interactions, but again, they delete every 12 hours. He may have interacted with them and we just didn't see it, didn't catch it in time. Who knows? But I have screenshots upon screenshots upon screenshots of this. And Volk on their social media is making statements like, and people wonder why I show up to cons with my gun.
Oh, we're going to get to that in very shortly.
Yeah. So it gets wild. Yeah. Keep going.
All right. So we got the community manager side of things. And this is how one community manager stole all of Battletech. Meet Rem Alternus, the new community manager and marketing director of Catalyst and owner of diverse and inclusive content consulting company, Rem Alternus. And here is the Rem Alternus Twitter bio. It says, a woman-owned, nerd-focused creative works company based in Chicago.
Who gave an interview with a Battletech fan site, also going somewhat woke for similar reasons, essentially saying they had played Battletech twice in their entire life.
Yes.
And only weeks before being hired as the community manager.
And yes, that goes to the next part of it here, where she says, only according to an interview with Sarna, she has played the game, played a sum total of 2 games of Battletech, right? Ever. As we continue on with the thread, Grum says there are two main fan community hubs for Battletech, subreddit and demo team. She went after the subreddit first. The fan-owned subreddit, our Battletech, used to be very active. Have you been active on the Reddit, the subreddit, Razor?
I haven't because I don't use Reddit, but I know a lot of people were. Mage Leader, I think, was before all of this.
So they had a Helldivers like no politics rule. So when the fanfic Battletech Pride anthology was posted, mods took it down, similar to how Helldivers took down posts about pride capes in their own game. The rule was fair. It cut both ways. But this didn't sit well with Rem, with pride authors, or with our Sigmarxism. This is the Warhammer, the woke Warhammer subreddit, essentially where all these franchise castaways are coming from that are influencing Battletech. I think what's happening with Battletech really is there were fewer Battletech fans to begin with, so the effect on the franchise, they weren't as effective at defraying basically the adverse consequences of it, right? They couldn't it's like they had a lowered immune system compared to Warhammer. Warhammer's been woke for longer, but there's been more pushback because there's just more fans, I think, is really what's happening. Okay. Let's go to continue.
Mm-hmm.
So this didn't sit well. They complained very loudly, which once again, we've talked about this, that it's been a consistent theme with every single issue that we've had. It's been a very vocal minority, a very loud vocal minority.
Oh yeah. Fueled by dupe accounts, inevitably, just to sort of amplify their numbers.
Right. So Rem with Catalyst started a new quote unquote official subreddit and started to officially promote the Pride anthology. Do you recall this Pride anthology thing happening last year?
This is fan fiction, right? This is just a bunch of franchise tourists wanting to make a political point. It's not official, but Rem decided to make it semi-official by posting it to the official Battletech Facebook page, I believe it was, posted it on there. And that really raised a lot of eyebrows. That's when a lot of people just checked out straight up and were like, what is this? And meanwhile, if you pointed that out, you got pushback from Catalyst on their official accounts saying, oh, this is not an official Battletech product. Yeah, but you're posting it. And more crucially, think about all the fan-made content that they're not cross-posting. They're not posting Tech's Battletech videos. They're not posting Mage Leaders stuff. I did a welcome to Battletech video that has probably drawn more people to the Battletech hobby than just about anybody on YouTube. And that's not me beating my own chest. It's been on there a long time, and a lot of people have seen it, right? That never got posted over on their official Facebook page. They're posting this deliberately and for socio-political reasons, period.
I have a very basic question when it comes to the Battletech Pride Anthology 2023. Why does it is it the robot that is trans, or is it the pilot that is trans? What are we talking here? And how can a robot be trans?
Exactly. Maybe that's why the land air mechs, right? You're on land, you transition to air. I don't know, but exactly 100%. And it's never been in the franchise. More importantly, I remember watching interviews, not just with Blain Paro, but with Mike Stackpole, saying there were literal editorial directives from FASA long before Catalyst took over, saying no politics and no sex. You have to keep things at a PG-13 maximum kind of level. You have to keep them at a certain level. I don't know where cutting your dick off and replacing it with a fella vag is PG-13. I don't understand how you can make that happen, but apparently they've decided that's the direction to go in. I've also noticed the franchise getting a little more R-rated in the fiction too at the same time, and I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that was really what allowed this and facilitated it.
Well, we're going to continue here as Grums continues. Once again, credit to Grums for putting this together. It says, what happens next happens fast. According to allegations by the community, including some ex-moderators, Rim began to threaten the long dormant Battletech subreddit owners. Yeah. She said Catalyst would pull all support and followers unless he fired all the, quote, problematic mods and allowed her to install her own moderators. The owner did just that, firing every moderator on the subreddit. What?
Yep. They essentially forcibly took over the subreddit. And the owner of it was, the sense that I get was the previous owner of the subreddit was just like trying to be a team player, just trying to be nice. Like, oh, you have a problem? Okay, do whatever you need to do. They just kind of lifted their hands and said, whatever, do your thing. And they took complete advantage of that. They basically just steamrolled what had been a fan-built community in order to make it an official Catalyst thing. And Rem tried to spin this as, well, Battletech didn't have an official subreddit. So I said, well, if you want an official subreddit, then we'll make one. Well, of course, they're selling that as we made one. No, you didn't. Somebody else made it, and you took it over forcibly. It's ridiculous. You could have made an official Catalyst Battletech. No, you wanted to take it over. And the only reason to take it over is because you wanted to silence the people who were there to begin with. There's no other reason to do that.
Why couldn't they just said no?
I think, like I said, I think they were being a team player. The users, I think, felt differently. But I think the person made the mistake of assuming that they had good intentions. That's the sense that I get from that situation.
Okay. We'll continue. A new fleet of left-leaning mods were brought in, all members of, wow. So they were all members of our socialism and our Sig Marxism.
Every single one.
Wow. And Catalyst official rules were imposed on the fan-made community. No politics was enforced, only in one direction, favoring the left.
Yep.
Anything on the right was removed. This kind of echoes what Arch was saying a couple days ago with Warhammer, where he was talking about how everything is politics unless it's my politics, right? And when it's my politics, it's not politics at all. Why would you even assume that? But
yeah, and they'll mock the old oh, comics were never political. Battletech was never political. That meme, right? And of course, it's hilarious because meanwhile, you've got these kind of dictums that are out there. No politics in Battletech. Dude, that's a Mozart symphony to my ears. Please, no politics in Battletech. But of course, it's only enforced in one direction.
So Rim then closed the official subreddit, and Catalyst took over running the former fan-based endeavor. Leftist posts began flooding in. Soon after, the traffic plummeted. The new socialist-run Battletech subreddit became a ghost of its former self. So this was more or less rejected by the vast majority of people who were like, I don't want to deal with this bullshit, and they left.
Because Battletech has been apolitical. I mean, probably the defining facet of the Battletech franchise is that it has its own internal political framework. It does real world politics poison this setting because it already has a richer political sensibility that is self-contained. You don't need to validate trans rights or communism or any modern cause célèbre because you have sort of semi-historical analogs that already exist in the world and have their own self-contained logic. They're attempting to have the real world intrude on this escapism. And we've heard this song and dance again and again and again.
They continue. But there was one more group that needed to be controlled, the prolific fan group called the Demo Team. We talked about the Demo Team earlier. And then once again, you said this more or less sounds like it's like store owners who get like a glimpse of what's coming, or like retailers, they get a glimpse of like beta testers.
Retailers, people who run game groups, that kind of thing. And of course, because it's so open, it was also open to ideologues coming in. And it should be mentioned, we mentioned Volk earlier. Volk, when all of this drama went down, hadn't even been a Demo Team member for a full year yet. This was a brand new member of the Demo Team. And they were now imposing their will, doxing people, canceling people, calling them problematic. I mean, this is when Arch says they want to just take over your hobby. This was like, oh my gosh, an encapsulatory example of that phenomenon.
We talked about like the Demo Team and kind of what they are. And it says if Rim controlled the Demo Team and Battletech's and the Battletech subreddit, she would have all of Battletech fandom under her thumb. Mary, a Catalyst employee, served as liaison and a moderator of the Discord Demo Team server, but was very hands-off and neutral, letting the fans run their community. She started to work with a troubled trans demo member, Robin, aka Volk, to compile a dossier of, quote, problematic Demo Team members. You just mentioned this. Were you around for that?
Yeah, this was, right. I've heard about all of this stuff. And yeah, this is the problem. Volk is handing off docs to moderators. They're handing off docs, to whoever. They're handing it off to Faith McCloskey. And it's just, is doxing allowed or isn't it? And well, we learn a little bit later when people find out about all of the doxing and someone actually attempts to impose consequences on Volk. That's when it really heads fanward.
All right. Robin was sure that the Demo Team was full of, quote, Nazis, and made a social media post about carrying guns at cons and put these Nazis in, quote, body bags if they came after him/her. He was compiling a list of these members, including personal information, which he shared with Rim as she encouraged him and others to, quote, report them. So actual posts like this, this was Robin. Robin, why do you carry a handgun to your Battletech events? It's just a board game. Because there's nothing motherfuckers like this running around the community. That's why. And if they try to hurt me, my girlfriend, or my players, I'm sending them home in a goddamn body bag, period.
Yep.
And this is allowed?
It's not only allowed, there's official Catalyst employees interacting with and encouraging this person. And again, a Demo Team member for less than a year. Like most of the Demo Team has far more tenure than this person.
Well, let's ask about that. How long? Like, what's the average demo team? Like, are we talking people who have been demo team members for 5 years,
More
10
than a
years?
year. Yeah, years for sure. Catalyst has only had the license for what? I'm not sure exactly what year, but it's got to be coming up on 20 years, something like that. They're really a post millennium kind of concern. So, but yeah, the demo team members themselves have been around for a long time. Volk was a newcomer.
Well, there were some consequences to that. As it says, after Volk posted the weapons threat, Mary removed him from the demo team. So it looks like there was a little bit of consequence saying, "Hey, you can't do that."
Yep.
You can't.
And this is where it really blows up. Is a moderator dared to remove someone who was doxing and harassing people and being encouraged to do so by Catalyst employees.
This was when Rim stepped in. She had Mary fired from Catalyst, and using the dossier did a purge of the demo team.
Yep.
Not just the demo team, just prior, as Mage Leader, once again in the chat, was posting his video about the situation. Rim and her community team did a mass block of Mage Leader, Razorfist, and any associated followers or anyone who complained about the demo team situation. So you and Mage Leader were definitely impacted by just saying like, "Yo, what the fuck?"
Yep.
And that sounds like pretty much what you were doing. Like, "Yo, what the fuck?" Like, it's more or less. This doesn't seem right.
And they used, as if you'll pardon the turn of phrase, as a catalyst, they posted sort of I don't know what to call it. It was like a statement of ethics or like a company-wide policy statement on their official Twitter account, which again, go look how many followers they have. No one pays attention to the Catalyst account, right? It's really, really small. And you read that statement and it could be taken to mean almost anything. It was no politics in Battletech, but of course we don't know that they do that. We know that they do the exact opposite. As long as you're leftist, you're allowed to have politics in Battletech. And then the one that really got everyone's goat was playing Battletech is a privilege. Something like that, and you will have that privilege revoked if you violate one of the company's policies and things like that. Anyways, they post this statement, and I think what they did was, I think that statement was deliberately worded in a way that it was going to aggravate certain people. And so they used as pretext that statement and some of the replies to it as an excuse to mass block a bunch of people that they already had a great big list of. I'm convinced that's probably sort of the play there. And I did have it on good authority from people both in the demo team and current people who work at Catalyst that was essentially what happened. That basically they knew that they wanted a new PR initiative and that most of these people were probably already on a list.
So you are
Which is why, by the way, when I posted, I did quote tweet. It was probably the first time I had ever quote tweeted Catalyst. And I quote tweeted kind of pointing it out. It wasn't even an insulting tweet. I forget exactly what I said, but it wasn't even particularly snarky. I was immediately blocked. And a bunch of people who responded to me were like, "What's this account? Why am I blocked by it? What is it?" People who hadn't even interacted with Catalyst, people who didn't even know what Battletech was. They clearly had used a block bot to go through my followers, probably through Mage Leader's followers, probably through Blain Paro's followers, and just instantly it was like, execute Order 66. They purged all of the Jedi in one fell swoop.
You said you weren't even critical of them. You were just kind of making a statement. I think that's a really good like microcosm of like we've crossed this bridge with folks to where any sort of criticism is seen as harassment. Mm-hmm. Or if you get in the way of just saying like you said, "Yo, what the fuck?" Like, dude, this ain't right. All of a sudden that's seen as harassment today. And that's how you get situations like this.
But doxing, doxing where they're in league with Catalyst, that's not harassment, because that's the whole reason this thing blew up, right? Several of the demo team members were being doxed. Different people in the Battletech community were being doxed by this person and being encouraged by Russell Zimmerman and people on that Discord, right? And again, people like Mike Stackpoler on that Discord, Randall Bills is on that Discord, and somebody pointed that out.
Who are these people you're mentioning here?
Authors, people who run Battletech through Catalyst. These are Catalyst employees.
Got it.
And when they pointed this out to the moderator of the Discord, they helpfully pointed out, hey, doxing is against the rules. Here's a list of your rules. They were like, okay, fine, they're banned. This Mary person, this moderator, banned them. And of course, in turn, she was banned herself. She wound up getting kicked out, and that's Rem Alternus essentially was behind all of this.
Okay. So the author, you said Mike Stackpole, right? He's one of the guys?
Yeah, he was in that server. He wasn't, we don't have evidence of him directly interacting with Volk, but, you know, because he's pretty busy writing books, I would imagine. But yeah, he was in that Discord.
Well, here's a video. I don't know if you've seen this or not. This is from Digital Diversity. Battletech support trans rights for those who helped shape it. And there's a have you seen this video before?
I've never seen it, but I know he's woke as the day is long. So,
and you're going to see several authors here. We'll just watch a quick 30 seconds of this.
Yeah.
I am Michael A. Stackpole. Trans rights are human rights.
Hey, I'm Brian Young. I'm an author of Battletech and a whole bunch of other things. And I'm just here to say, you know, trans rights are human rights. And Battletech is for everyone.
Hello there. This is Russell Zimmerman. You might know
now Russell Zimmerman.
The Undercity.
Russell Zimmerman was complicit in the doxing of that demo team member. Remember this as you listen to this. This guy was encouraging Volk in their doxing attempts.
Shadowrun, Vampire, Battletech, or something else entirely. But no matter what world I'm writing in, no matter what game I'm writing for, there's one rule that's a universal truth. Trans rights are human rights.
That's the one rule, by the way.
That's the one rule of human existence, folks. Did you know?
That's the only rule. The only rule right here. Yeah. So
hang in there, dudes, dudettes, and duderinos. You're not alone.
Oh, how dare he not include they thems in that? I only heard dudes and dudettes. It's not very inclusive.
I think he just assumed his audience's gender.
It's really upsetting to me. Really upsetting. But let's go and continue with this thread as there's more here. It says Rim continued to move in on her own demo team members, and Catalyst formally took over running the fan-based Discord server. She had Volk reinstated. He was later removed for unknown reasons. Yep. Strict rules came in. No critique.
He was later removed. I mean, let me just add to that. Volk was removed when videos like mine and Mage Leader and other people came out and put Catalyst on blast for this, put Rem Alternus on blast for this. They thought they could get away with this because no one was paying attention. And when people like myself and others in the Battletech community pointed out what was happening, they quietly let Volk go and just didn't make a public statement about what had gone on. Even though, again, Volk's not really the problem. Russell Zimmerman encouraged this. This is a Discord. This Starleague Discord has Mike Stackpole in it. It's got Randall Bills in it. It's got Russell Zimmerman in it. It's got people who work at Catalyst and who were encouraging this person by association.
So Volk got put on Volk more or less. It was discovered that this was happening, and then the pressure got too hot from y'all just more or less calling it out. Yeah. Okay, so then strict rules came in. No critique of Catalyst or Battletech. What? No critique at all.
Yeah.
That's how do you not critique this? I don't. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Mary's husband was also banned, which was crucial because I forget exactly what capacity he worked in, but he was actually even more closely associated with the franchise than she was. So when she got fired, it was going to be a huge issue. And of course, it wasn't much longer that he was even there. They wound up getting rid of him too.
And Mary, once again, this is the Catalyst employee who served as the liaison and moderator for the Discord demo team right there. So she got fired, and then Mary's husband got banned from guilt by association, more or less.
Probably he voiced a protest. Yeah, who knows?
Right. And then Grums finishes up, says, this, you see, is the power of that community manager's wield. This is a cautionary tale about why gatekeeping is important. If you don't gatekeep, people like Rem will use it to invade your hobby and kick you out. This is why we fight. So that's kind of where things are at right now. Razor, has anything progressed or changed since that, or is this a lost cause for those who are?
Well, the latest is Otter Poops. They're now moving on to people who are even neutral in this situation, just because they're not towing the line. I read this as the death throes of a company that are. This is a huge mistake on a lot of levels. The biggest one, of course, is that Battletech is basically on life support in a lot of ways, in that it's a lot smaller than Warhammer, so they can't sustain as much damage as Warhammer. Games Workshop is a much larger entity now. They weren't at one time. There was a time FOSSA were way bigger, right? But today they have to rely on Kickstarters. They're relying on crowdfunding to fund their games. And I don't see how over the longer term, they've now had a couple of Kickstarters that weren't funded, not Battletech stuff, but other stuff. They tried to launch other games and whatnot. I don't see them being able to sustain that. Look, I know how much I was paying per year on Battletech. It's more than I care to admit. I know that they can't afford to lose a half dozen people like me that were spending that kind of money on this hobby, on new Battletech stuff. And I know they've lost at least that. If even a half dozen people like me, people who are spending as much as I was on the Battletech hobby, if they go Splitsville, Catalyst are going to be hurting. I think they are feeling the heat. I think that's really what it is. They're beginning to check their pocketbook and notice that this is starting to affect their bottom line. And that's why a lot of this stuff is, I noticed they made a statement that was kind of thinly veiled at people like me who made videos about, hey, do you want to play Battletech, but you don't want to support Catalyst on account of their swollen inflamed cunts? Yeah, well, here's a video on how you can continue to play Battletech without funding absolute gaping assholes. And that really, they made kind of a thinly veiled statement about videos like that. And indeed, anytime my video, which is called Support Battletech, Not Catalyst, anytime it's been posted anywhere, they immediately remove it and ban the person who posted the video. I think, this might be a little bit of an egotistical statement. I don't mean it that way, but I think that video and videos like it were one of the catalysts for this behavior, is they recognized that now some of the fans were in open revolt against them.
Right. Well, here's the video. If anybody, we'll make sure to link that in the description. 50,000 views. That's definitely a worthy of drawing some ire and attention. So what's next? Is this something that can be solved? Is there something that can? I mean, really, is this one of those things where the company just needs to be gutted from the inside out and then start over, or is this something that will never change?
I mean, at the end of the day, I think this is a company that they're licensing a franchise that has survived worse than them. That they picked a terrible franchise to do this with. That's why I made that video. And one of the points that I repeated therein, in Battletech, you don't need to buy anything new from the company in order to play Battletech. Anything can be a mech on the tabletop. And by the way, that's specified in the actual source books if you buy them from back in the day, even in the new ones. You don't need to buy the plastic models. You don't need to fund these people. You don't need the new source books. This is the worst franchise they could have possibly picked to go this way, because we don't require Catalyst's endorsement to play this game. This is a completely fan-driven franchise. It really is. I recognize, look, I'm a defender of IP and copyright. I certainly recognize their legal claim to print Battletech stuff, at least as long as they're solvent, which isn't much longer if they keep behaving this way. But at the end of the day, the fans get to drive the conversation. The fans get to drive the franchise forward. And they're essentially trying to dictate to the fans what they're allowed to do. That might fly in Warhammer. I think there's a lot of cope going on in the Warhammer community, frankly, from people who are like, well, we can just drive the franchise any way we want. Not really. You've been conditioned to buy all the new armies. And unless you buy all the new armies and all the new stuff, you're not really playing Warhammer. That's a problem. That's a legit maybe insurmountable problem with that franchise. That is not the case in Battletech. If you want the ideal battleground in this culture war, it's Battletech. You don't need Catalyst at all. You can sever them from this equation entirely and not miss a beat. And so videos like that, and like I believe Mage Leader made one as well, they're crucial in directing people toward Battletech and away from Catalyst. That will bleed them dry. That'll be a death by 1,000 cuts. And frankly, if their recent behavior is any indication, they're already on borrowed time to begin with.
Cartography Prime came in and says, I'm a 30-year Battletech fan / player. I stick to my gaming group and a few small online groups online. This seems to come out of nowhere, shocks and angers me. I also feel helpless to do anything to stop it. Is that a reoccurring theme, Razor? Longtime fans who just are like, well, yeah, what the and they people feel powerless attached.
Especially when you've been left alone as long as Battletech. Dude, I said something to the effect in my video of, we survived the Dark Age. We survived essentially the death of Battletech. I've been a fan of Battletech since the early 90s, right? When I played MechWarrior 2 for the first time and played multiplayer Battletech and watched the cartoon, man, we've weathered some serious turpitudes here. We've weathered essentially the death of FASA and the franchise by association. When I made my first video talking about Battletech, the franchise was dead. Catalyst had the license, but were doing nothing of consequence with it. And their early efforts were not particularly well received, right? This fan community knows how to endure. So this is what I mean when I say this is the ideal front on this culture war in a lot of ways, because Battletech is so fan-driven. It was kept alive by the fans when Catalyst weren't even in the equation, when Tops were completely ignoring it and Microsoft weren't making video games about it. We, the Battletech fans, were still talking about it, talking about the lore, and that's how these YouTube channels immediately started. And I have to make some pointed remarks at Battletech fans on YouTube who have channels and are saying nothing about this. You built your livelihood on this, knowing that you helped sustain the community and that the people who now are being canceled helped you to sustain that community with it. You are a cowardly cunt if you are saying nothing right now, especially if you know those people and you know them not to be neo-Confederates, know them not to be neo-Nazis. You are culpable by association. Get off your ass, dislodge your thumb from your dumper, and make a statement, you gutless cowards.